The fact that there are 2 to 3 major gay bars here in Austin, and 2 of them took like 3 weeks to say anything about Black Lives Matter. And so a friend of mine, her mom always says that like no comment is a comment, like your silence says everything I need you to say. So I called them out on that panel being like, you're put on notice. Like, we see that you did not say anything. You have not supported us. Like, you finally said something weeks later. And, you know, I was having a conversation on my podcast about performative allyship. Like, right now, supporting Black Lives Matter really seems like, quote, in vogue, or it's like this moment. And I'm like, no, it's not a moment, it's a movement. This conversation's been happening for 7, 8 years now. So I think as we continue to have these conversations, as a Black queer woman who does this work, who sees how often Black people, specifically Black women, show up for other communities. I mean, any protest you see is there, right? Like reproductive justice, global warming, and environmental things. Like every single protest that happens, there is a Black person, if not a Black woman there. And just how we are constantly told to kind of wait our turn. And I've been quoting Malcolm X, like the most disrespected woman in America is the Black woman. Like, we are expected to do all of this work, take the bare minimum, accept the fact that just be grateful to be in the space. And like, well, no, we want so much more. We show up all the time. And you know, the minute we say something, it's like, well, she's angry. Like this, the negating of our identity is just deplorable and disgusting, and just honestly a slap in the face with how often we show up for other people, and we are expected to be strong and resilient and just accept it. And I think we're all moving toward this moment of like, we're no longer just taking the bare minimum.
Right. And I agree with you. As women, especially as Black women, me and my sister have this conversation often. We're expected to be super women. We're expected to take care of the kids, take care of the house, take care of the community. And when everything goes down, we're the first ones people call. Like, hey, this is going on. Can you? Hey, this is going on. Can you support? Hey, we need blah, blah. We're the first ones everybody calls, but where is our help when we need it? And so, and I pay attention to the conversations when people say, hey, where is this community in this fight? Where are they? Why are we walking this alone when we support everybody else in their fight? So that was one of the things. And there are other pitfalls to the pandemic, you know, on top of healthcare. When you think about the lack of healthcare or access to healthcare for certain demographics of people, us being one, and why it's affecting us in such a negative way, people don't think about those things. But the other pitfalls is income. A lot of the people, some of the people that I know had to go to work. They could not stay home. They, for whatever reason, they had to go out, which they put their lives in jeopardy, and then had to come home to families and children because, hey, I can't afford it. And even with the offer of unemployment, some jobs are like, yeah, we will deny it. So the certain pitfalls from an income standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, relationships, everything is so volatile right now. People are on top of people. People are aggravated. You're even aggravated with your kids. You're aggravated with the dog. You're aggravated with everybody. It's like, don't talk to me. Don't look at me. You know, so all these added pressures and these pitfalls in the midst of a pandemic, people don't understand the mental health tolls that it takes on women. Women typically carry the brunt of almost everything. And so when we look at the pandemic and the pitfalls, I'm just concerned about us as women. And then in the midst of it, we have a crazy president. And we really need to get people to vote. Like I told my sister, if he gets into office, I'm going, somebody give me a ticket to the moon. I cannot stay on this earth. I can't. I can't take another 4 years. I cannot. I just literally can't. So,
amen.
We got to do what we got to do to get folks energized, to get folks talking about, to get folks signed up, vote. You tell your cousin, your mama, auntie, whoever, make sure everybody, and even with the voter suppression and everything that's going on, we got to show them that we are not, because women are a strong voice. If we ever come together, if we ever, you know, unite and really say, hey, this is what we're going to do for this reason, for this cause, whatever, it will be all over but the shouting. But we just got to get to that point. So
I think
there are more of us. There are more of us than them. We just have to get our stuff together.
absolutely.
I think it's also like how often if we look at politics, like it was ingrained in society for so long, like you don't talk about politics or religion. Like just that whole trope of it was so that we wouldn't talk to each other about this. And now that, especially like my generation, the generation coming up after me, like the major push into seeing how much essentially like we have to save this earth because of, global warming and everything that's been going on, gun reform. Like if you look at the kids from the March for Our Lives and like all that stuff that they're doing right now around gun reform, like we're sick of it. And 45 has literally just been out here spewing hate for 4 years. And one of my biggest things with people who claim to be religious or there's a separation of church and state, and it's just how often people let their religious views dictate how people in this country get to live. Like there's freedom of religion, but there's still like this whole trope of like Christianity is like the basis of our whole society. Or if you are again not cis, hetero, and white, you are literally on the chopping block. Like there's levels for sure, and privileges, there's different levels to privileges. But if we just look at how often we are just so uneducated and we aren't taught the levels in government, and that there are some like for here in Texas, it is so hard to register to vote. Like it is almost impossible. What? They have these like Jim Crow era rules that are still in effect there's people who they're called voter deputy registrars, VDRs, and they're the only people who can register you to vote. There's no online no online registration. And if, for example, like say I was a VDR and you came to me, but we don't live in the same county, I can't register you to vote. You have to find someone in your county to register you to vote. Only me and you can touch the form, send it in. It's a whole thing. And it's punishable by law if one of us breaks that.
That's crazy.
There's a organization called Register to Vote that you can go to register the number 2vote.org, and you can see if you're registered, and if not, they'll send you the form with a pre-stamped envelope, and you can send it back in if your state doesn't have online voter registration. But they had to work around this because of this, essentially this law in place to make it so impossible. And Texas like purges their voter registration all the time. So like I recently, this month alone, got 3 separate cards saying I'm registered to vote, just because they purge it so often that I literally check it every month just to make sure I'm still on it.
Yeah.
And even if there's like something wrong in your last name, like there's just all these things. And when we talk about voter suppression, they have it so, and it's so racist, like blatantly racist, of like if you have a hyphen in your name, if you have an accent in your name, if you have anything of these that like quote unquote seem black-ish names, they will make it so impossible for you to register to vote. And just the amount of like, if we look at local elections, that's where a lot of the stuff happens, is local and state level elections. And the fact, like when this stuff happens, it's usually during the day when people have to work, so making it very impossible for people to get there. And it's like just very behind the curtains. And so it is so important for people to read and know what you are voting for. Like for example, we have a seat open, I think it's for judgeship, but there's this woman who's been in this seat for a long time who basically is against, for all lack of better terms, like against like domestic and sexual assault survivors. Like we'll not bring them to trial, we'll dismiss them, we'll do everything to just not hear them. So we're here in Austin specifically, we're trying to vote her out because it's just literally so difficult. Already, if you think about the people who are brave enough to come forward because of the scrutiny, you finally come forward and your judge, thank you Bex, it's DA. You come forward and you're ignored, and your judge doesn't even listen to you. So it's just whoever doesn't listen to you. So it's just all these things that are put into place that make it so impossible for people to learn. This 24-hour news cycle is exhausting for us. Not only that, like if we think about racism and how much it affects people of color, specifically Black people, like my friend Anna is a nurse, and we talked about generational trauma on my podcast. And she was telling me how like when we talk about like Black people being exhausted, it's not like us being overzealous. It's literally the water in your body. We're 80% water. So the water in your body has traveled through 4 generations. Now, each generation has suffered trauma. The trauma that we feel literally goes back to when our people were forced here on boats. Like, this isn't us being like overzealous or facetious or like just being, you know, it's not hyperbole. It is legitimate intergenerational trauma that we have suffered and have to work through on top of our own stuff. So all these conversations that aren't happening because they don't want us to talk to each other. They don't want us to be educated. They don't want us to again have allies and talk about this. And you know how often Black people, specifically the Black Lives Matter movement, is vilified, but yet the KKK is still not recognized as a domestic terrorist. There's so much stuff that happens that is just so blatant since 45 has become president.
Right. And that is, you think about that, and I tell people, whether you're religious, spiritual or not, because I believe God, I believe the Bible. And when we talk about generational curses and things that happen over and over, and if you read the Bible, it's the same thing. And so it's just disheartening that you think that we've come so far, yet we still have so far to go. Seems like we overcome one tiny hurdle, and then we got Mount Everest over here still looking at us, and it's like, well, dang, I can't catch a break. Like, right, exactly. Patty's like, yeah. I'm like, you know, we fight and we struggle, and we sacrifice and we give and we work to get so far, and then to get knocked back down by somebody like a 45 or the other hate racist groups. And you know, just as a general, from a woman's perspective, like, we got people coming at us at all sides, and we feel like pressed, like we feel like we're stuck, like we can't get a break. And so, you know, it's just a matter of us, like you said, there's more of us than them. It's just a matter of us coming together, understanding, you know, we don't have to look alike, we don't have to be alike, we don't have to think alike, but as long as we have each other to support each other, to encourage each other through those times that affect us all the same, because no matter if it's Patty or if it's Bridget or if it's Bex or if it's Marquita, we all as women are going to face some of the same challenges because we're women. And so we could just rally around the same things together and unite as women, man, we could take over the world. And I always say, if a woman leads this country, we will be in so much better shape. I mean, I tell people all the time, locally, all politics are local. Everything starts at the local level. Your judges, your district attorneys, these are the people that you need to be careful of when you elect them into office. You need to be careful of those folks, because at the end of the day, they determine the fate of so many people that could be connected to you, to your community, and then everything works upstream, so to the White House. It doesn't work from the White House down, it works from local level up. And so we have to educate each other.
The whole conversation of like, people are like, it's not personal. I'm like, no, politics is personal. If you have someone in office who is racist, everything they do is going to show that. So like this whole trope of like, it's not business, it's just politics. Like, no, it's literally affecting me on a local level, on a personal level of everything that you do in this city. Yes.
Well, we're going to get through it though. So the next P we want to talk about is possibilities. So you stated that you're looking to figure out what you do next because you had a job offer, and then a few weeks later they furloughed you. So how do you bounce back? But then we also talked about kind of how I haphazardly got into politics. You know, it wasn't something that I ever thought I would do, because I did not like politics. I still don't like politics in and of itself, but I like being able to help people and being able to serve people and being able to make my community better. I just don't like the dirtiness of politics. It's a dirty job. It's a dirty, and people.
Nobody likes the dirty part.
No. Oh my God.
His minions.
Right. If I could, and I mean, literally, I walked away from the mayor's office and started my own consulting business. And I said I would never do politics again, ever. I was so done. And literally a couple of months later, another friend of ours who was former U.S. Attorney General for the southern states of Georgia, he's been in the House and Senate of Georgia, calls and says, hey, Tonia, I need you to work. I was like, yeah, nope, that's a hard pass for me. And he just kept calling and calling, and I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, and then I finally said, okay, I'm gonna give him an outrageous number, and I'm only gonna work these hours and da-da-da-da-da. And I threw my offer on the table. He's like, okay. I was like, oh, Oh Lord, foiled again. So I'm back kind of in politics, helping with a campaign for the U.S. Senate. But I say, okay, God, if this is where I'm supposed to be, I don't like it, but I'll do it only because you say I got to. So kind of the possibilities during this pandemic, I told you I took a 50% pay cut from 85,000 to 40,000. And when you have to make decisions I lost a house. I was like, I can't afford it anymore. Like the house that I lived in, and then I was divorced on top of all of that, in the midst of all of that. So you go from all this money and a husband to, oh yeah, by the way, you divorced now, and now you're gonna make half the money that you used to make. So you gotta make decisions, and it's like, I'm such a person that I believe in kind of protecting my image and who I am. And when it was like, right, Tuesday Talks hadn't been in long. And one day I just couldn't take it no more. I broke down crying at one of our Tuesday Talks, and I was like, I gotta tell y'all something. And they thought, what? You having an affair with somebody that we know? And they were thinking all this crazy stuff. I was like, no, my house is in foreclosure. They was like, oh girl, that ain't nothing. They was like, what? And so I was like, what? So they helped me through that process, because it really, really, y'all just don't know, I struggle with being so proud that I'm like, I can't be working in the mayor's office losing my house. And my sister said, well, you're losing your house because you work for the mayor, because you don't have no money. So, it was kind of one of those aha moments where, okay, God, this is a journey evidently that you have me on. I'm here doing the things that I'm doing for a reason. I'm going on the path for a reason. And so when you and I talked, Bree, we were talking about just, you saying, hey, yeah, I had this job, but then now I don't have this job. I wanted to move to Philly, but now I don't know. So what possibilities do you think are waiting for you now that in the midst of this pandemic, you've lost this job? What do you feel like your possibilities are now? Because you talked about getting more money. You talk about getting more speaking engagements, all since this has happened. So
as someone who grew up very religious, like I said, my godfather's a pastor. So I grew up very much like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So when you said never say never, I immediately thought tell God your plan so he can laugh at you, because I'm such a planner. Like my friends always laugh at me because it's like, do you want to hang out? I'm like, ooh, I'm busy tonight, but what about next week? And it's just so I'm very intentional about my time, right? So with me, I had this job, had talked to my CEO. I was like, hey, I'm thinking of moving. And he's like, yeah, sure. You'll just work for us remotely when you move. And then COVID happened. And so I was working for a tech company, but I was working in the nonprofit part of it. So that's why I got cut. And so for me, I have found that the most beautiful things have happened from me when I just don't have a plan. So I've very much been in this space of just like, okay, whatever is meant to be will be. And I think when I moved to Austin, I had been wanting to move to Texas for 2 years. And then my dad got sick. I was between jobs, all these things kept happening. But when I finally okay, I'm going to do it, everything fell into place. I didn't have to fight anything. It worked for itself. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of feeling that same sort of energy now of trying to make Philly work in a time where it's just I think you need to stay here. And I don't think it really clicked for me until I was sitting talking to a friend the other day, and she's like, well, how many episodes have you recorded of the podcast since you've been in quarantine? I was like, well, when I came back, when quarantine first started, I had just came back from hiatus. I took March off. And so I literally had episode 14 coming out, and that was it. And I was like, okay, I got to figure something out. I just the other day recorded episode 45. So I've recorded over 30 episodes in quarantine. Wow. I've been able, your sister seeing me on Misha. I met Misha 2 days before that 2 days before that panel. I've known Danielle and Jensen for 2 years. And so Danielle and I had been talking, and she's like, we're putting together a panel. Misha wanted to talk to someone. I think you'd be a great fit. So literally just that got connected. And then, just here in Austin, we did the Share the Mic initiative that was national, and we did an Austin version. And my friend Jen, she said, I will only do it if Bree is the person who takes over my Instagram. And so Jen has over 1 million followers. So she gave up that. From the day I lost my job till now, all these like really random, beautiful things have been happening between, you know, being able to collect unemployment, but then also like being able to talk to some people like, okay, I want to get off unemployment. What does that look like for me? And having a friend who runs a consulting business for nonprofits, but she was like, well, I need someone to handle fundraising for a lot of nonprofits because I don't know how to do that. So like starting with her there, and then doing speaking engagements, which I've been doing for years, but now I'm like, well, I can charge you because
Right.
I'm doing all this emotional labor. And you know, the first panel we did came out May 30th. So in the last month, it's on YouTube. It's had over 30,000 views.
Oh,
So
wow.
like, that alone is so that I've done interviews, I've done podcasts like you, I've done virtual other panels. Like this time I have been allotted has helped me to grow my portfolio, if you will, like really giving me space to show people what I can do. Like I'm doing a seminar for my alma mater. One of my old professors was like, hey, we want to talk about racism and privilege and we want to pay you to come do like a session with our freshmen. Or, you know, just all these really, like, again, random, beautiful things have been happening. And so sitting here in Austin and really feeling alone, like I'm what I like to call an extrovert. I am never home. I always have something going on. I have sat on 4 boards in Austin. I just joined another board here, Lone Star Victim Advocacy Project. They need help fundraising right now, so shameless plug. I sat on that board right now. I'm doing my panel. Like I'm really involved in Austin in the 4 years I've been here, between NLC and a bunch of other things. And so a friend of mine, we've been talking, she's like, I don't think you're meant to leave this year. I think that's why so many beautiful things have been happening. And I'm like, we'll see. And now like, I told myself, like, if I don't have a full-time job by July that is in Philly, I'm going to hold off. Because I mean, packing in 2 months is unrealistic in my life right now. And so another friend of mine called me yesterday. She's like, hey, so my organization, they want to bring on a fundraising consultant. And I threw your name and I'm like, gosh, dang, like, all these things, like, you think you know what is going to happen, and then like all these other things happen, and it's just, I think, just having your heart open and just like not hiding it. And that's just for me, like, my godfather always just says, like, sit and be silent. Sit and be silent and see where you're led to. And you never know what is meant for you until you just get out of your own way, which for a person who is a planner is the most difficult thing for me, to be like, I'm just gonna do nothing. Like
my sister said, say it again for the people in the back.
My grandma calls it a jet plane. She's like, you're a jet plane, you're never home. She's like, what are you doing right now? Sitting home. Like, honestly, been working out, been reading, been taking care of myself. And it was so interesting to see how exhausted I was, but didn't ever give myself the time to be I go to bed now at midnight. I can wake up at 5 and work out and start working at 7 and do it like in just like these really packed days. And now I'm just like, this morning I woke up at 9, worked out for like, I was like, I'm gonna work out, and then I ended up doing laundry. Then I worked out. Then I took a shower. These students here in Texas, they're doing a documentary about me. So they like came over, like a whole day. We were all masked up and gloved up, and so like they picked me to be the documentary subject. So they came over, and it was just like, if I would have packed up and left, I would have missed so much, because I had it in my brain that I knew it was better to be, and just like sit and be silent. And the connections you have of just like the fact that I got picked to be a documentary subject is PFLAG, which is this organization for parents of LGBTQIA youth. It's like a support nonprofit. And one of the Austin chapter people, the ED, she was contacted by the students, and she's like, oh, Bree Jenkins. Like, she didn't even think about it. She's like, oh, Bree. Like, just I hate to say it, like the name I've made for myself in Austin, like. No,
don't hate to say it, because we do, as women, we do say, I hate to say this, or we don't like to brag, but it's not bragging. It is what it is.
Yeah. So it's been funny, like all my friends, like, you know everyone. I'm like, I don't know everyone. And people are like, okay, it's like 5 degrees from Bree. I'm like, I can accept that. So I'm the same way. I'm like, I just want everyone to know each other and connect and do great things. Like, I don't have that big of an ego that like I need to be at the center of everything.
Yeah, right.
I've done that on panels of like, if someone asks me to do a thing that I can't do, before I say no, I will ask a friend or two, like, hey, I can't, do you want to? And if so, I'll connect you. Like, I'm a big believer, like, there's room for all of us to win.
Yeah.
So, like, this whole, like, we have to constantly be in competition is so tired, especially now with everything going on. Like, why are we having all this inner fighting?
Right.
Why can't we just all create space and do things? And I know it sounds like very, like, woo-woo and hippie, but I honestly believe that there is space for all of us if we are willing to make ourselves more available to it and taking our ego out of it. And sometimes you just need to be that connector for other people. And you know, there's just so much out there for all of us, and it's just like, what can I do to help all of us win?
And see, and that's me. My goal always is, how can I make somebody's life better? I'm like, I say I'm a life enhancer. How can I enhance somebody's life to make it better than when I found them? So my goal every day, and I'm like you, like, okay, God. So after this pandemic, literally after I stopped working, I was like, oh Lord, what did I do? Jesus, you know, what was I thinking, you know? But at the end of the day, I had to go back and reevaluate. I'm like you, I don't like talking about my accolades or the things that I've done. And to me, they are insignificant. But when I started telling you, you was like, wait, what? And I was like, and it's just, that's the nature of who I am. Like, low key bragging, I don't brag. Like, I do what I do and I keep it moving.
Facts are facts.
A lot of people are like, well, you did this and you did that. And I mean, literally, one of the shows we had was talking about whether or not to be successful in life, you have to have a college degree. I don't have a college degree. I will be 50 this year. I went to college for a year. I got married at 19 and life happened. I never went back to college. In my mind, I've achieved some level of success without a degree. And so we had the conversation. The topic was to degree or not to degree. That is the question. And for me, just from the seats that I've been in and the places I've gone, God has opened a lot of doors for me. And sometimes it's not about a piece of paper and what you've done. And I don't discredit anybody that has a degree. More power to you. I don't say that it's wrong, but for me, it just never worked out. But I was still able to achieve a certain level of success. And I don't think we should be judged based on how many degrees we have. Because at the end of the day, you can have a degree and still can't do the job. And I've ran across many of people who we hired because they had this degree and this da-da-da. And when they got in there, I was like, are you kidding me? My sister's like, yeah, the president has no degree. Like, hey, if you can make it to be the freaking president of this country and you don't have a degree, that's all I'm saying. Not that he's a good example, but still, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But, you know,
He's not.
it's like, you know, he's not a good example. I know.
That's an example of failing up.
Right.
Failed up.
Well, he paid for someone
Coming.
he paid for someone to do his SAT. Isn't that proven?
Yes. So, you know, it's just, but I'm always thinking about, okay, I know Bree, I know my sister Stacy, and I know my sister Stacy loves Supernatural, and my sister Stacy wants to do XYZ. So, hey, Stacy, you need to talk to Bree. Or, hey, Patty, you do XYZ, you need to talk to Olivia, you know. So I'm always trying to figure out who can I connect to who so that they could get together and produce something and make things better for somebody else. And so the possibilities, I think, now in this pandemic are really endless because we're being more creative. We're having to sit still and get our thoughts out. Like, I've helped so many people be successful at their businesses, opening businesses, running businesses. I'm always that silent partner that comes along and supports and helps and encourages. And my stuff is at home sitting on the back burner. And when I get home, I'm like, oh, I'll work on this. Yeah, it don't ever happen. Because then when I get home, I got work, and then I have a 6-year-old godson who believes he's my child. So my spare time is with him. And so I'm raising other people's children, helping other people build their dreams and their businesses and their mind. But when the pandemic came, after I left my job, it was like, oh, okay, now I got to get serious about me. I've got to get serious about the things that I want to do, because it's not fair for me to help everybody else achieve their dreams and goals, and I don't even try with mine. And
You got to fill your bucket. You've got to fill your own bucket.
You're right.
You cannot forget to fill your own bucket.
And I preach that all the time, Patty, but guess what I don't do?
Well, I mean, even to backtrack, like, success is not linear. Like, there's no like blueprint to what success looks like. Like, I never went and got my master's, and so with me applying for jobs in social work for a long time, people are like, well, why don't you have your master's? Like, because I've lived experience, which I think I could
Exactly. Hello.
like some have been able to do. Also because the education system is all messed up and very privileged. But anyway, but then also like what you were saying before about like helping other people, how often we put ourselves last, and then comparison is the thief of joy. So it's like us doing all these things for other people, and then like there's nothing for us to show. Like we'd be like, I helped this person do all their things, and you're like, well, great, but now you have nothing. So I think that's also sitting in quarantine is like, we now have nothing but time to finally work on things. But then also I've been telling other people of like, if your success every day just looks like you getting out of bed, that's great. Drinking a glass of water, taking care of yourself, going for a walk. Like success isn't the number of followers you have or how much money you have. It's like literally waking up every day, being like, I am a good person. I did the least amount of damage possible today. I helped a friend find me. I talked to my godson is 10 and he thinks he runs my life. So no, 11. Oh gosh, he's 11 now. He tells me I'm still not allowed to date. He's basically my father.
Oh.
But yeah, it's a whole thing. But it's that whole thing of like, we are expected to give so much of ourselves, and now we are finally given this space to do what we need to do for ourselves. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned is just, like I said, I was so run down, but I knew I had to keep going. Yeah. And now I'm just like, okay, like I just hung up with the friend. She's, you're the busiest person I know in quarantine. So like, you're not going anywhere. Right. You're still doing all these things. I'm like, there's still like work to be done inside. Yes. Like I still have things I want to get done. But now like being able to do them on our own time has just been so beneficial. And seeing how, you know, the jobs that are able to be remote, like how people are able to work from home now. Environment, like there's so many positive things it's been having on that. And, you know, and but then also seeing how important healthcare is for the essential workers who still have to go out and work, specifically essential workers of color, and how they don't have health insurance. And so they're asking them to do all these things. And then if they get sick, it's like, well, you could have not come to work. Like, no, I need to. So I think us being in quarantine has taught us to have difficult conversations because now we have to. And I don't think that the rejuvenation around Black Lives Matter and like this really big uptick we've seen is any sort of accident. We were, I haven't watched the video of George Floyd's murder, but just having
I can't.
No, I don't need to.
I don't either.
But now that we are all home and sitting with what our homes look like, how that plays into our privilege. Like, do you have a safe place to sleep? Do you, you know, if you think about Breonna Taylor, do you fear the police will come into your home? Like, there's just all these things that I think we are now forced to really look at ourselves in during this time, that I think is why we are seeing such an uptick in Black Lives Matter, allyship, voter turnout. Like, if we think about Wisconsin, and they had an election during the peak of quarantine, when it's like back in March or April, and how many people went out and voted. And then we also see on the other side, in Louisiana or Kentucky, can't remember, but
Kentucky,
that they closed their voting location and didn't tell anyone. And it's
Kentucky
in a black neighborhood. Like, these aren't accidents. I think people, now that we're sitting home and noticing so much more, I think that's why everything is changing.
That is absolutely true. That you're forced to deal with yourself. You're forced to deal with your family. You're forced to deal with your surrounding, which is your community. Even if it's that you're just your neighborhood, you're forced to deal with these things now because, you know, we don't have a choice right now. The distractions are being taken away from us day by day. And so we're having to have the hard conversations that we may have been running from. We're forced to face realities that we may have wanted to ignore or sweep under the rug. We're having to do all these things because guess what? Everybody's at the house, or should be, because we still have idiots out there doing dumb stuff, going all over the place and supporting the foolishness from this 45 and putting everybody else's lives in danger.
Which I also want to point out really quickly that, like, now the opposite side understands my body, my choice because they don't want to wear a mask.
Right.
No,
Right.
actually,
Which has
I don't
nothing to
think they
do with it.
They
Nothing.
don't. They
I don't
don't.
think they made
Or
that
the whole
connection.
defunding, like I don't know what defunding means. I'm like, and I saw a thing, I was like, you understood it when it said defund Planned Parenthood. I'm like, oh, it's like you're not slick. Like you learn what you want to learn, right? And so I think that's all a lot of the things that are happening right now is like you're saying, it cannot be avoided.
Yeah.
I've been telling people like I totally get where people come from of like, you know, my family member believes X, Y, and Z, so I'm gonna not talk to them. Like, listen, if that's what you need to do, that's great. But also like remember that you are in a space to maybe have a conversation. If you have a racist family member, they're never gonna listen to me, but they might be willing to hear what you say. And you know, it might not be what you would consider a fruitful conversation, but just being willing to get a little bit uncomfortable and essentially talk about, well, why do you feel that way? Where did you learn this from? Like all these things, again, having to sit and deal with these people because you're home anyway, so it can't be avoided.
Yeah.
Actually, for a while, I was able to avoid everything. Like for a while, I think, with all the unrest of the world, I actually went into a depressive state, and I was like, no media, no people, no family, I cut everything off for a while. And I'm not naturally, I'm a learned extrovert. I'm not a natural extrovert. I'm actually an introvert, and people often get me very confused. But I receded into my home, and of course it was a place of privilege. I could work from home. I kept my job. I live in a safe neighborhood. I all of those things, but it took a moment for me to regroup my mental health before I could engage the world. And now my goal is to actively have these conversations, to actively participate. But 2 months ago, I could not have. I was a basket case. Just
it's heavy. It's heavy
until I could lift it up again. And now I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Like, let's do it.
Yep.
So the last P that we're going to talk about is peace. And a lot of times people can't find peace. Like we said, we're distracted. We have so much going on that we don't even have peace within ourselves. And what I've learned during this pandemic is, like you said, like what your grandma say, or the pastor, sit and be quiet. I'm learning that day by day. Some days I just sit in my chair and I don't do nothing. I just sit. And I've never, because I'm the extra extrovert. I'm always gone. I'm always around people. I don't know what it is to sit home. People always inbox me like, how do you do it? You're involved in so many things. You do so much. You're always gone. And I was never home. So I guess losing a home really wasn't that bad because I wasn't there anyway. But to be that person and then have to sit was torture. The first few weeks, I was like, oh, I can't take this. I can't deal. I'm going stir crazy. I can't sit in this house. What you mean I can't go here? What you mean I shouldn't go? And then I finally got to a point and I'm like, okay, God, maybe this is that time for me to kind of be still and hear what you want, because it's all about what we want. Oh, well, I want to do this, or I want to go there. Like you said, our plans. And God is like, but that ain't what I want you to do. That ain't where I want you to be. And so if you study constantly running, you can't hear God. I don't care what you say. You can't hear somebody if you're running 100 miles an hour in and out. You can't hear nothing. And so until you're sitting still, being quiet and being at peace with yourself, being at peace with you and your God, then there's not going to be any peace anywhere else. And so even in the midst of the pandemic, I've been able to find peace where if we hadn't had this pandemic, I don't think I would have found the level of peace that I have now. And so I think the pandemic has brought so many good things to people if they really just took the time to listen and pay attention. Whether you believe God or not, whether you're a believer or not, even if you just listening to that inner witness of yourself, even if you just listen to, hey, I've been thinking about these things for a while, just de-cleansing and decluttering your inner self, your thoughts, your heart. I've forgiven a lot of people recently. And for me, it takes me a long time to get mad and to hold a grudge. But once I get mad, it's over. It's a wrap. But now God is dealing with me to go back and apologize to certain people. You know, I'm like, but they was wrong. It don't matter. It don't matter. I didn't tell them to apologize. I told you. I'm like, why I gotta be the one, you know, but because I'm that rebel. But, you know, even in the midst of this, being able to reconcile within myself, hey, okay, whether they do right or not, that's not you to worry about. You do what God told you to do because you got to get right within yourself. So this pandemic has brought a certain level of peace, it's brought a certain level of clarity that I probably wouldn't have had because I was running so much. So now I'm able to focus on Tuesday Talks. I'm able to focus on Far More and Associates, which is my consulting business. I'm able to focus on some of the things that I've been holding on to for so long because now I got to sit still. I can't go everywhere. I can't do everything. So I go to work, I go to the store, and typically basically come home. So now I have more time to just kind of relax, not be so in a hurry, not be so in a rush, not be so overwhelmed with doing 10,000 jobs, knowing that I'm only one person. But because I had a habit of saying yes, now I'm like quick saying, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Or I can help you, but it's gonna cost you. Because I was that one that would do stuff for free. And now I'm like, hey, yeah, this is how I pay my bills right now. So if you really believe in the skills that I have, you will pay me. And if you can't pay me, I can't help you. I'm so sorry. Sorry, not sorry. So that's kind of where I am in this whole peace in the midst of a pandemic. So how do you find peace in the midst of the pandemic? Bree.
Yeah. In January, I told myself that I wasn't dating this year. So I live alone. I don't have kids. I am single. I don't have a pet. Like, it was very much like me intentionally being alone in 2020. And then quarantine struck, and I was like, okay, like, we're real alone. And so with me, it's been really reestablishing my relationship with myself and how much we can lose ourselves in who we are to other people, right? Like, I think all of us always like kind of jump like, well, who are you? Like, well, I'm a good sister or a good coworker or a good godparent or what have you. But it's like, you know, who are you? What do you like to do? And I was asking a friend the other day, she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, sit with that, call me back, we'll talk later. But I think of people right now, like there's this person I used to be friends with who's been really struggling because now they're single. And I think it's because they've never had to be alone. Like talking to people who have never been single for a long time, have never lived alone, and really just being like, do you like yourself?
Right.
Well, are you a friend to yourself? Like really sitting with conversations of like, how do you show yourself respect? And on the other side, like, who are you connected to? Again, my grandma always tells me, like, you are the company you keep. And so,
That's
like,
right.
me, I've really learned that, like, being my friend and being connected to me in any way is a privilege. And not everyone is allotted that privilege.
That's right. That's
So
right. That's right.
relearning that in all of this has been life-changing. I mean, there's one particular person right now, we got in an argument last night because she's like, well, you haven't been calling me. And I'm like, you could pick up the phone. Like, if you have such a problem with me not calling you, call me. Like, I am the kind of person who will pick up the phone at any time. Like, that's not the problem. Right. But if you want like this hand-holdy sort of, oh my gosh, you're not my friend if you don't call me every day, I can't do that. That's unrealistic. Or like, she didn't like how I wasn't texting her back. I was like, no, I'm texting you back to the answer that you're asking me, but these aren't in-depth conversations. Like, do you want to have those sort of things? Like, but I can't handhold you. And so where I am right now is like, I don't have the energy to constantly validate you. Like you, I'm sorry, if you're looking for validation in other people, I don't think you'll ever be happy. And I had to learn that for myself of like, who am I? Who is Brianna outside of work, outside of the things that I do, outside of the show that I have? Like, who am I and what do I sit with and what are my values and what are my goals? And really, I think that's been one of the biggest things in quarantine for those people who are single, live alone, is like really getting to a place that you have to relearn yourself. How do you communicate? Well, how do you make connections, especially during this time? Like, how are you being intentional about things? So my piece right now has just been like, I don't need to be everybody's friend.
That's right.
I don't need everybody to like me.
Yeah.
I don't need you to validate me.
Yeah.
I don't need you to tell me I'm great. I need you to know that I know things that are true about me.
Right.
And if you never talk to me again, if you do not like me, I will not lose an ounce of sleep.
Not a bit.
Right? Like,
okay, I need that on my mirror every day, your speech, because I don't do that. because I don't want anybody to be my enemy. I want to help everybody. I give all of my bucket away. And so I'm working.
But on the other side, are they willing to do the same for you?
Right.
We are able to be good people, but
That
if you ask for a person to be like, hey, like, would you mind doing this? And they have I have found the people who get angry when you ask a request, they aren't good people, in my opinion.
Takers. Right.
If me asking you to do something to make our friendship or our relationship or our partnership flow more nicely makes you quick to anger, I don't need it.
That's right.
I would rather do the work alone or
by myself
than have to keep constantly tiptoeing. Like, I have not had to tiptoe around people in my whole life. I tell people all the time, I am 30. I have been through, Lord knows, my fair share of things. Like, I didn't talk to my own family for 8 years. If you think you not liking me is gonna make me cry about it, like, that might sound harsh, but this is how I've learned to survive. Like, life is too short. There's too much going on. I have way bigger concerns than you feeling as though I haven't done what I can because I didn't call you. When you can pick up a phone and call me, like I can call you, like the amount of people, for lack of a term, who play victim in relationships, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't. I literally have so many things on my plate. We all do. So why exert extra energy in a situation that just doesn't need it? And I think that comes from a place of me living my experience and other people living theirs. But that's just how I have found so much peace, is just like, I don't need it.
You found your worth. That's the key, I think. Okay. And so for me, I'm working on that. You know, I've got my little workbook on mindfulness and all that stuff and rethinking your thinking, you know, and so I'm trying to, you know, find people who have gotten to the place like you have, Bree, you know, that I can, you know, maybe through osmosis, you pass that over to me. You know, you rub off on me a little bit. Right, Marquita?
I don't think that's how that works, but okay.
I know.
I'm working with you, though. I'm working with you.
I know, Marquita.
And it's definitely like a learned thing. Like, this wasn't overnight. Like I said, it's been a good, like, 15 years of me doing this work. Like, I started going to therapy when I was 15. And I know that therapy is not something everyone's afforded, but, like, just being able to go into a space where I was allowed to have feelings and have them validated then by someone else. And I always tell people, like, if you're not in a place where you love or like yourself yet, find someone who does and talk to that person and ask them those questions. Like, one of my best friends, I've known him since I was 12, and we had this conversation of, like, the reason why our friendship has been so beneficial is because when we were both struggling with so many things, we loved each other through it. Like, when I didn't, you know, like myself, I would call him, like, I'm having a tough day. He's like, and he would go on a whole, like, conversation about it, and vice versa. Like, I also don't think, like, self-love is in a silo. Like, for sure you have to love and like yourself, but until you are at that place, it is okay to lean on people who love you and validate you that way to get to a place like this.
So do you talk about mental health on your podcast? Everybody should have a speed dial of a therapist. And unfortunately, Black women typically shy away from it, and I really feel like it is so important for us to talk about our experience with therapists and mental health things, because it's invaluable, and it's a privilege that we did not embrace, and I think we so need to go in that direction.
Yeah, I did a podcast on mental health. I have a lot of friends that are in that mental health space. And so we had a very in-depth conversation about mental health and how we have to protect it in Black women who typically, I don't need to talk to nobody. I can handle it. I'll get through it. I'm gonna just pray about it. That's typically our solution. You know, we're not taught, we weren't raised to seek mental health. You know, that's taboo. That's like for crazy people. We don't want to feel like we're crazy.
You don't talk about your problems. Everything's supposed to be in your house. Yeah.
So we had that show, and I'm on YouTube. So if you go back, you can watch some of the episodes that I've posted on YouTube about the mental health and just the state of, and I'm always constantly talking to a few of my friends about getting mental health help, because some of the stuff we carry is too heavy. It's too heavy.
Absolutely. And I've been trying for years to get my mother to embrace, and she has lived 1,000 lifetimes and has done and seen so many things. And I'm like, I know that I'm 48 and I'm just exhausted.
Yeah.
From the skin I'm in. And for her to have lived through so much more. And I don't even, me and my husband, we don't even have kids. And I'm like, I don't even know how she survived day to day with 5 kids on her own. But I've been trying to get her there. And she diminishes herself by saying, you know, it's just what you did. It's just, you know, she just happened. I'm like, okay, so you're magic. That's beautiful, but be supported. She's amazing, and she does not even recognize that.
Yeah, my sister is in the background over here saying pressure breaks pipes. At some point, those pipes are going to bust. And I'm the anti mental health person. So my sister has been having her therapist for 15 years. And she says she doesn't want to be incarcerated, so she has to do. She don't want to be incarcerated or committed, so she has to do the psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, counseling, because that's what helps her make it day to day. And even sometimes doing that is still a struggle, but there's that relief, that release that you get to have with this person who knows nothing about you, but is able to listen to you without judging, without, you know, berating, without any of those things, and you're able to get that stuff off of your chest.
Yeah. And I agree with that. You know, currently I do it weekly. Every Friday, my therapist calls, hey, I'm your jam. Come on, let's talk. It's like I'm talking to a friend almost, because you really just have to find the therapist that meets your personality, meets your goals, and fire and get moving until you find one that does. Yeah. You know, I've been through 3 or 4, and this is finally the one that gets me, that goes, Patty, you know, I'm looking at my notes. I told you what you should be doing. You know? And so every week, she gives me a very small, tiny habit to add into the mix, and then make sure that I'm successful. If I'm not, she makes me start over and do that for 2 weeks instead of 1. But that's in mine, you know, like she said, it's privilege. My mom was anti. She's from Europe. She's anti-religion. Same thing, the crazy thing. My sister, no, they're not going to do anything because I'm always right. She's 12 years older than me. So I've got that dimension, you know, and my daughter is in therapy as well. She went for 6 months, and she said it was the best thing for her because she didn't know when she was coming out, that Bree, because you met my daughter at the Women's March. And so she's like, you know, now that she knows who she is, and I'm supporting her because now I'm understanding what it is that to be her authentic self. So it's just like, she doesn't see shame with it because she saw that mom's going to therapy. Does that make sense? Yeah. You know, we go when we can't handle it by ourselves, or we need privacy because we need to figure out our words before we go to our loved ones for help. Mm-hmm. So that's just me. Go ahead, Bree. I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, a couple of my friends who deal with mental health and I have had conversations. One of my friends and I talked about abandonment on a podcast episode. This Thursday, my friend Carly is a therapist, and we talk about post-traumatic stress, but like how it is about, it's complex PTSD. And it's not that you like went through a like specific one event. It's just how your whole life has led to you having complex PTSD. We talk about, you know, people who come out and struggle with their identity, people who grew up with parents who didn't support therapy. We talk about, you know, just all these facets of how our actual whole lives can lead to complex PTSD. That was a really interesting conversation. But yeah, I wholly agree with y'all. I mean, having grown up in a family where at first it was like, you don't tell anyone about your problems, everything is handled at home. Mm-hmm. So when my mom passed and I was having such a difficult time, that my aunt was like, no, there's a therapist at your school. They have a support group for kids who have lost their parents. And so that was my first time going to therapy, and a support group was just like having people in there who got it. And that's how I got to go to therapy later on in life. Like I went to college that had on-site therapists there. Like there's just a lot of privileges that I had in my educational systems that I think if I hadn't, there's no way I would have started that therapy. So I agree with all of y'all. Like it's just this thing that, again, another way that we are taught societally of like, keep your issues to yourself. Like why have human connection? It's like, no, we need that to be full, well-rounded people. So yeah.
Well, you guys, we have made our hour mark, and I am enjoying the conversation. Oh, we made 45 minutes almost. So it's been a good conversation. It's been good, connections, Bree. We appreciate you joining us, and Patty and Bex and Marquita and Felicia. I can't see you, and Camilla and Cookie and Stacy. Thank you guys, and Leandra for joining us tonight. Did anybody have any questions for Bree, or did anybody have any questions that they maybe wanted to ask that they didn't get answered, or something that they heard that they want clarification on? Bree, could you put your podcast in the chat group, so everybody, if they want to go and check out your podcast, they could go check that out. And I'll put Tuesday Talks with Tonia in as well, so that for those of you that aren't.
I know, Marquita, you got questions.
Curious, I'm new. Patty just invited me just to, like, as you guys were starting. So Tuesday Talks, this is a regular thing. What's the origin of that? Is this, I mean, I'm in Austin and you're in Atlanta, or you're in Georgia.
Augusta.
I knew that. I could say the words, but
That's okay.
So how do you get invited to this regularly? Is this a club?
We have a Facebook page that you can like and follow, Tuesday Talks with Tonia, and Tonia's Tonia. And I'm also on YouTube, Tuesday Talks with Tonia on YouTube. So once you subscribe to the channel and once you like the page, you're able to keep up with things that we do. We come on every other week, so it's bi-weekly, every other Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30. And some weeks we just do catching up with each other. We just do a kind of a girl session, and we don't go live, or we don't invite a lot of people, because we just talking about, everything that we have going on, just to make sure that we're all good. And this came about because when I moved to Augusta, the only family I had here was my dad, and he and I had a restrained relationship. But what I found was women in Augusta were very cliquish. They were very petty and territorial, and that's just not who I am. I've never been that way. I'm a friend to everybody. I never meet strangers. Like, I like everybody, and everybody typically likes me. But I just found this culture of women, and I was like, I know we're better as women. And so the story is, when I went to a funeral in Missouri, I'm driving by myself. I'm coming back home to Augusta. I'm driving. It's a 10-hour ride. I get stuck in Tennessee in the mountains. No phone service. The satellite radio went out because it was an accident, and literally I went like a mile in 2 hours. So this time I had was just quiet, and it was just me. And so God just started sharing stuff with me. And Tuesday Talks with Tonia, I was like, Tuesday Talks with Tonia. And I'm like, who wants to listen to me? What do I have to say? Talking myself out of everything that he's saying. But I came home, told my sister about it, and she was like, you better do it. And I'm like, yeah, I still wasn't sure, still wasn't, feeling it. But I just wanted a space where women could come and be their authentic selves. Don't worry about who people think you are. Don't worry about, what you look like, how you dress, what color. I didn't, pretenses, anything that people just see from a physical, I didn't want people to, be worried about that. And then if you have an issue, come and share it with the group. And I've told everybody up front, everything we speak in here is confidential. If I hear it out in the street, and whoever was the culprit, you can't be a part of the group, because we can't break confidence and trust in one another, because that's the whole reason we exist. And so it started out with like 7 people the first time I did it. And now, mind you, I have hundreds of friends who all say, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there. And then 2 weeks later when I did it, I had 14. And then 2 weeks later, it went down to 7. So it's been a myriad of people, but I have people that have been with me from day one. My sister, my friend Camilla, Leandra, and a couple other folks that have been there from day one. And we have our celebrations on our year anniversary. But it's just really a space where women can come together, share, encourage, uplift, support, build. We go out and we try to do things in the community. Anybody who has a need in the community, they know to reach out to me or Camilla or one of us, and we'll find an answer. And mixed with my working in the mayor's office and just all of the people that I know, people typically, I still get calls to this day, even though I don't work in the mayor's office. I get calls all the time because they know that at the end of the day, I'm going to find you some help. And so that's how Tuesday Talks came about. And so we do the Facebook page, we do YouTube. building more, like Bree said, really focusing on putting out more content, and really focusing on building this brand across, not just in Georgia, but across the country. So that's how we started, and that's where we
That
are.
is beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, I'm glad I could take part, and I've already pulled up the Facebook thingy now. I just got to figure out how to, I guess I like it. And
Yeah,
then,
just like it. And once you like it, you'll be able to see everything. It'll come to you. And when you go to YouTube, you have to subscribe to the channel.
Perfect.
I can do
So
that.
Bree introduced me to you, so I'm glad to be here. So thanks for having this. It feels very, where we're not alone anymore, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, Patty. I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
Martina. Thank you,
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
I want everybody to stay safe and stay engaged, and let's keep moving, and let's change the way our country is. Let's change our communities one person at a time. That's all it is. One person at a time.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining. And this will be posted on YouTube probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. So you'll be able to go back and look at it again.
Sounds good. Okay,
All right,
bye.
everybody have a good night.
Take care, guys.